All right, so quick one. We're going to be talking about Figma today. We're going to be using Figma. I will explain a couple of things around the Figma application. So let's go ahead and open up Figma. If you don't have Figma downloaded, I think we explained how to do that, but I'll also show you a quick example of how you can do that. So let's go ahead and pull up our browser. Let's go to figma.com. I'm very sure you've created an account already. So let's go down to products. All right, so you can go down to downloads. So here you select either Windows or Mac OS. You can also install a Figma on your mobile, Android or iOS for preview. And you can also install the Mac OS font installer or the Windows font installer. Well, working with the desktop app, you don't require the font installer. So just go ahead and click on desktop app for Mac OS or for Windows, and this would download automatically. So I don't need this. I already have Figma downloaded, and currently using a Mac. So I think you do the same, follow the same process. Once you're done downloading this, you just have to, open it up and install. It's quite easy to do. So yeah, let's move on to opening Figma on our laptop. So on the first view, we're presented with this. This is Figma application open. I'm going to explain various parts of this UI so you understand how best to navigate this environment. So the first thing you have to look at here is the new design file. We also have the new FigJam file. Then we have an import file, which means we're able to import a certain type of file, maybe a local file you have on your computer, or you can also import a sketch file. I'll show you an example. Um, yeah, so if you are a sketch designer or probably you design using Icons 8's Lunacy app, you can also import into Figma. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about what we have right here on this side menu. First off, you see you see your profile, right? So you have a profile right here. We also have the community where you can download or probably preview a couple of work from the community designers, right? From designers in the community. So you can download various plugins. You can download widgets. You can download FigJam templates. You can download design systems. A lot of visual assets, web design templates, UI kits, um, typography kind of presentations. You can download wireframe designs or even illustrations. So we have a lot in the community, and I would advise check the community out for inspiration. We have a lot of stuffs here that will definitely be of benefit to you. So go ahead and check it out. And so back to the entry page, you can see we have recent, which is what is loaded at this point. So we have some of the design files, some of the previous websites, we've worked on. Yeah, a couple of things, from dashboards to websites. Next, you see you have draft. So if you have a design, that you saved in the draft, probably because you've not saved it properly, they are currently located in the draft. So the draft holds a bunch of designs that you're working on, but are not part of the project. So you have every item here; they're not part of a team. You have those designs, here at this point. Um, yeah, and the next thing I have here is my favorite files. I added these files as favorite files, and that's why they appear here. We can actually create a new file and add it to our favorite file, and I will show you how to do that. At this point, we have a bunch of themes, right? So let's go ahead and collapse this um, here. Let me collapse this once for now. Next, on this part, we have the new design file, and you use this to create a new file, right? A new design file. You have the new FigJam file, and you use this to create a new FigJam file. We'll also talk about this in a later class, and we also have the import file option. Yeah, so these are basically all our files. You can filter the FigJam files or prototypes, design files. Basically, I don't use FigJam. I use a bunch of other tools for the whiteboarding, but FigJam is a great option. I've tried it out. come up with a video teaching you how to use FigJam, and that will be shared with you. All right, so on this side we have our profile. As you can see, we have our community profile. You can have a different profile, displayed to the community. You have your internal profile. You have the plugins page where you can, probably develop plugins. We have the settings page. We also have the theme, so we can change from light, dark, or follow your system theme. I think I would prefer to also keep this as system theme. Yeah, you can add an account, so you can be signed into multiple accounts. You can also log out. All right, so basically similar to what you have on the web, right? You still have the filter option here where you can sort items. Oh, sorry, you have the sort option here where you can sort items alphabetically, or by date, or probably by order. So you have the sort by and you have the order right here from oldest to the first, from oldest, or probably from the newest. So you can also access deleted files right here. You see I have a lot of deleted files, as you can see. Let's go back to um, let's go back to the draft. Let's create a new file, and I think, are we missing something? Let's look at our internal profile. So basically, you can update what your profile looks like. um, yeah, you can change these stuffs. So I'm just going to say um, simple architects products. All right. Yeah. So and you can see the list of files you've contributed to. Um, yeah. So let's quickly go back to the draft. Let's create a new file, and let's play around with that. Click on new file. This is currently creating a new file, right? So what we're going to do is to understand the tools right here, and also understand what the properties area looks like. So yeah, we'll do that in a bit. We'll have our file open. The first thing I would love to show you is what you can do from here. By clicking on this drop down, you can actually export this. You can duplicate the file. You can rename the file. You can move this into a project. Right now, we just have a simple file. It's not inside a project yet. You can also mark it as a favorite file, so it can appear right here. So you see we have the file right here. Let's go ahead and name this file. We're going to call this file. So I just double clicked, right? So I can either choose to double click, or I can click on this and rename, right? So let's call this um, 2.0 learning file. So I can go back here, and you see it is updated right here, and it's also marked as favorite. So let's come back here, and yeah, let's talk about a couple of things from the menu. So basically, we have quick action, which is also for search. I love to use the shortcut command slash. I believe for Windows users should be control slash. So yeah, you can search for stuff, plugins, right? So these are plugins. Um, yeah, we can search for well, a bunch of other plugins as well. So you basically use this, to search for stuff like Splash and the rest of them. The plugins you have installed, and I'll show you how to install plugins as well. So we have file, and from the file menu, you see you can create a new design file, a new FigJam file. You can import a file from Sketch. You can place images, right? So you can place images right here. You can save a local copy, on your laptop. Probably you plan to export or share that local copy with friends or so. So this is basically going to create a version of that file on your local storage, and you can share that file, right? So save to version history. Figma has version history where it's able to store different versions of your work, right? Similar to what developers will do when working on their code base. So but Figma has that kind of feature, and it's great. So you can also show version history where you see a list of different versions, and then you can check or move from one version to another, right? So let's assume something happens to your file and you want to revert to a previous version. You can do that from the version history. You can export, your work. You can also export your frames into PDF. So if you have multiple frames, export it to PDF, and everything would be saved as a single PDF file. Um, Down to the edit menu, you have undo, redo. So basically, what you use as Control Z or Control Y, On a Windows, here is Control Z and Control Shift Z for redo. And yeah, so yeah, you're working on something. For example, let's assume you have a rectangle. If I press Control Z, that goes off. If I come down to the menu once again and I go down to Edit and I do Undo, that goes off. So we have Undo, Redo. Redo is basically going to bring it back. So uh, yeah, so basically that's the functionality. And you can copy the properties of items. You can copy as a CSS object. You can copy as an SVG object, or you can also copy as a PNG object into another file, right? So you can also paste over this particular selection. You can paste your properties, or you can also paste to replace, which means the item you're pasting is going to replace what you have here. You can duplicate, Control D. Yeah, make sure you learn the shortcuts. It's very important that you learn to work with shortcuts. It makes your workflow much faster. So yeah, we can duplicate this. Basically, I'm using the shortcut here. Command D. As you can see, I have multiple items right now. So we'll talk about the properties shortly. Let's proceed. Yeah, you can also delete these items. Basically, what you would also do with your backspace, right? So um, yeah, so I think I would try to yeah. So we have the delete. You can set default properties. You can copy objects. You can copy the properties of an object if you have like a background color. So I'll show you a quick example. Even though we are not doing this yet, and we'll get there shortly. We have a particular item here. I duplicate this item. Let's assume I change this item to a basic color. I want to copy the properties of this item from edit. So we can copy the properties and we can paste the properties over on this on the other item, right? And you see it changes the color. So basically, I mean that is the functionality. Um, yeah, so let's quickly continue. One other thing you can do is to pick a color, and of course, there's a shortcut for this as well. I mean, you can basically just pick this item from here. You don't need to go that far, but you'll get there as well. So the idea is most of these things you see here are also you know um, found in multiple places, and there are shortcuts to do these things as well. So yeah, you can select all will select all the items you have on this design. So let's assume you have multiple objects, right? And you see we also have a shortcut for that. Select none, we unselect, unselect everything. If you have everything selected, select none would automatically, just reverse the functionality by selecting nothing, right? As you can see. Let's come back to edit. And you see, we also have a bunch of, other options, and these options will be active when you are currently working with items, such as forms or objects, and also working with effects. So yeah, we'll definitely get to try some of them. Maybe not from the menu, right? Maybe from some of the properties here, but it's quite the same thing. So we have views. Yeah, so you can turn on some items or turn some items off. There are basically a lot of items you see here. For example, layout grids, the ruler, which is what you're seeing right here, the pixel guide, which is basically what we can pull out from the rulers. So I'm going to take this off, and I'll show you, how we work with that. Back to the menu, back to the edit. Sorry, I think that's view. So we also have comments, and when people drop comments on your file, you can choose to see them. This is what you use for comments. We'll definitely get here again, so I can say change the color to blue, right? And that is a comment. So we have a comment right here, and that comment is loaded up into the file. So if you don't want to see any comments, you can turn off the entire comments. You can bring it back up. So basically, these are just shortcuts to make. They're shortcuts to this, right? To either declutter your working area. You don't want to see stuff like that. Um, yeah, so we also have outlines, so you can show outlines, you have pixel preview, mask outline, we have frame outlines, we have source use. So we'll explain some of these things when we start, working on some designs in here. Feel free to ask, in the chat or probably during the Q&A session. We'll talk about them, but I think it's better you learn some of these stuffs, when we are already designing stuffs, and we're going to design something today, like a quick example. Um, yeah, you can also show some panels and probably turn them off if you want to. As you can see, you can turn on some of these panels. This is the default left panel you're seeing here. You can also turn that off if you don't want to see that. So that's basically what you have in the view. Um, yeah, and then for the objects, for the object basically refers to an object. So if I have an object selected here, you see that most of those menu items becomes active, right? So you can group multiple items. You can frame selections. You can use selections as mask. You can actually set items as thumbnail. Probably when we are selecting a particular image inside the design. So you can also use fill for that. You can also use auto layout, which we'll talk about. It's more of an advanced concept. I will talk about that shortly. You can convert an item into a component with the idea of reusing that component. So um, yeah, and some other important things here: you can bring items to front, you can take them backward. When you have multiple objects layered on the screen, so you can bring some to the front, send them backward. You can also flip items horizontally and vertically. You can rotate items, right? And some of these things you see here are also found here. But yeah, this is just a menu. And yeah, you can see we have outline stroke. You can show or hide those selections. You can remove the fill. You can remove stroke. Yeah, so we don't want to waste too much time on these things, right? But it's ideal that you understand that some of the things I'm pointing out here, you should be able to do them even without coming here, either with a shortcut or probably you can do them straight up from here. For example, the idea of flipping stuff, you can also do them straight from the properties. But I think knowing the shortcuts would make stuff easier for you, right? So let's proceed. Text, this is what you get when you're working with text. So let's bring in a text here. Let's just say hello world. Yeah, so that's pretty small. Let's just make this 100. Uh, okay, so that's for the size. I'm gonna delete this item and also delete the comments. All right, so with our text, if we come back to the text menu, you see these items are selected. You can make some items bold, right? Italic, underlined, and I think we can go ahead and try some of these things. So this is bold, back to text, this is italic, back to text, this is underlined. So yeah, basically, the text styling feature. So you can do stuff from here. And remember, you can also do it, from properties. You can turn a text into a bulleted list. So bulleted list is when you have text, like this. So when you hit an enter with the enter key, you have right. So you have stuff like this. Okay, so that is what it's basically mean. Let's go back to text, and yeah, you can also talk about adjusting your alignment and adjusting the case, to uppercase, lowercase, and also probably switching your text direction from left to right or right to left. All right, so for the arrange panel, we can actually arrange things. You see we have align left, align horizontal centers, tidy up. So some of these things you're seeing here, we can also see them here, align left, center, and you tend to use them when you have multiple items selected. So let's assume that we have a different text here. It's possible to select both items and you see they become active, right? You can come back here down to the arrange menu and you also see they become active. So basically you can align left and everything will be aligned to the left, aligned properly. This is what we had, right? And this is what we have now. So because of the alignment, and then you can also try the other options, right? You can distribute horizontally, you can distribute left, so you can align top. Yeah, so it's basically similar to just clicking on these items. See, we have those alignments. Yeah, so basically, let's come back to what we have here. So that is what you have in the arrange menu. In the vector menu, you use this for working with vectors. All right, so basically the vector tool it's used for joining selections, smoothing your joint selection and also deleting helium selections. We'll talk about this and we'll work with an example where you can see where you can see this in action. Um, yeah, so for the plugins, we have from the plugins you can actually use one of the plugins here. You can check your installed plugins. You can probably create new plugins if you want to develop a new plugin, and you can find more plugins and basically searching for plugins um, on the list of plugins you have in the community, right? So um, yeah, that's what you can do. There are some other additions that we've seen this year, such as widgets. We would also explain how to work with this, and also components. So we don't have a component here for now, so let's just leave that for now. Um, yeah, so we also have the preference, which are basically your UI preference, right? We have the UI preference right here, where you can probably turn on some features, like snap to object, snap to geometry. As we work, we would understand these stuffs. You can also change the theme, as I showed you earlier. From the library, yeah, so from the library, you see a bunch of components and stuff you've added to your library, on your account level, and you can reuse some of these items within your new project. So yeah, you can actually open that library to see what you have. What we have here is basically a bunch of texts, text colors, I guess. So we don't need to enable this. I will show you how to work with this. Mostly when you are, you working with components, and when you are working with, like a UI kit. Probably you're working with a company, and they have a design library already. All you need to do is add that library to your Figma library, and you can always reuse some of the components in your new files, such as your buttons and all that. Let's talk about the items we have here. What you're seeing here. Basically, you need to understand that all the text and objects you create are arranged here in the layers panel. When you add stuff to your components, they are added in the assets panel. You see you have the components and libraries, um, and you can have multiple pages, right? You can have up to 3 pages on the free accounts. You can have up to 3 pages in here. Page one, page two, page three. So if I create a new page, this is page two, this is page one, right? So page one, page two. So let's go back to page one. You see these are some of the components we have, and we can, these are some of the items we have, right? So if I create a new item here, you see we have that item. We can also rename that item, right? So clicking on it this way, we can rename the item. We can use something else like my rectangle, right? So you can also rename the text from here, probably name, greetings. So why do we rename these items? Yeah, basically you just want to, have a sense of organizing or understanding the various elements you have added onto your page, right? So this is what we have right now. Let's talk about the other items. I think we can also, yeah, let's start from here. So we have the move tool, which is the default, this is what you use for dragging items or moving from one place to another. We also have the so next you have the scale tool, which is basically used for scaling your layers. We don't have any layer right now. Let's go ahead and create a quick layer. So I'm going to select frame, and I'm going to select from the templates. We have a bunch of templates in here. You can just draw any random size, but yeah, just maybe you need to use a template. Let's assume you want to have a very simple design for an Android application. I'm just going to click on the item here and then select phone, and I'll just pick Android large. So this automatically creates the size, for Android design. All right. So now that you have this, yeah. So now that you have this, you can use the scale to. The scale tool gives you, more benefits, because then you can scale both the content, within the frame. So let's assume we have a simple text in here as hello. All right. So this is what we have. The item within the file is not being scaled, right, as you can see. But when you use the scale tool, what you tend to see is that you're scaling every single item together, right, including the text inside, so everything is scaled down. So basically that's how the scale tool works, and I think it's quite nice if you want to scale probably you have a design and you think the file is too big, so you can use the scale tool to make that adjustment. Let's move on to the next. Yeah, let's move on to the next. So if I click on the drop down, you see we have frame and slice. So basically, when you hover on this, um, so basically, a frame is what I have used, to create the Android device we have here. But of course, you can create like a desktop screen. Let's work with the iMac, which is 1280 by 720, standard screen size for most you know, laptops. So next I'm going to do right now is to use the slice. Let's go down to click on drop down, select slice. I don't think I selected that. Let's try again. All right, now what can we do with slice? Basically, we can then choose to cut out like this. We can then choose to separate this. As you can see, we've been able to create a slice, which means that slice can be exported, right? So there are a bunch of stuff you can do, and we can export this slice right within the frame here. So basically, we use this for probably trying to export a portion of your design. And to show you what I mean, I'm going to create a rectangle here, and I'm going to give this rectangle color of red, something there. Okay. Okay. So now we have a full rectangle, but it cut across the slice. So I'm going to click on the slice. I'm going to click on the slice, and what I'm going to do, let's take that off here. All right, so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to try to export the slide. So when you look at the preview, you see that we're able to export this portion, right, and not the entire item. But of course, because we have part of this inside the slice, that is going to be exported as part of the slice. So that is basically the functionality of the slice. Most people don't know how to use this, but I think it's good to understand how it works and how you should use it. Now, on this drop down, you see we have a bunch of items here. We have rectangle, and yeah, so use the shortcuts. We have arrow for rectangle, L for line. So with the rectangle, we can draw out shapes like what I have here. With the line, we can draw out simple lines. Arrow, we can draw out arrow shapes. Um, Ellipse, we can draw out ellipse shapes, and the polygon. So basically, we're drawing out a bunch of shapes, right? All right, so let's talk about some of these shapes, right? I've explained how to use the rectangle tool. So let us create a very simple rectangle. We have one right now without a color. So let's go ahead and fill this. And then we can change the color, right? So we can change the color to that. Yeah, so we have a rectangle right here. So now we have two rectangles. Um, I have one here and this is another rectangle. Yeah, so basically you can apply a bunch of properties to this rectangle shape, and we'll explain these properties shortly. Yeah, so next we have the line tool for drawing straight lines, basically. So we have a very simple line here. We can also change the color. So as I said, we're going to talk about these properties. We'll explain the fill, the stroke, and all that. We have the arrow tool for drawing your arrows. You see that the arrow is currently in a black shape, and I would also talk about the properties too. We have ellipse, which basically is for drawing circular shapes. When you draw an ellipse and you want it to give you like a perfect circle, all you have to do is to hold the shift while you draw, and this is going to give you a perfect circle, right? So that is how you draw an ellipse. We have the polygon tool, of course, for drawing polygon shapes, and of course you can also add a property for changing the radius, right? Yeah, so you see, there's a bunch of handles or nodes, as I would call it, and you can use this for the radius, and you can then use this for the count. The count of the shapes, right? How many sides does this have? You can increase that. Okay, so that is for the polygon shape. We have the star. Of course, I mean, you use that for drawing a star, right? And you can also decide to touch on the ratio of the star. And also, you can touch on the radius of the star. So And I think yeah, we have the item for placing image. So basically, this would load up your images. So you have to kind of like importing image into this environment. So let's go ahead and try with a very simple image. All right, so you see that the image is currently selected. We have to drop the image in a particular location, or we can just put it up here. Uh, yeah, so we can stretch what we have in here. So yeah, basically you can import your different type of different images. Let's go back to talk about the yeah. So let's talk about the pen tool. So basically, under the pen tool, we also have the pencil tool. Of course, for the pencil tool, we basically just use this for drawing outlines. And of course, you would enjoy working with the pencil tool if you probably have like a drawing tablet. I think that is when you would enjoy working with this better. Looking at the pen tool, you can actually use this for tracing or drawing out shapes. For example, um, I'm drawing out kind of like a curve. So what I do is when I click and click and hold, then drag, right? So I click, I hold, and I drag, right? So to create these shapes, I click, I hold, and I drag. And it's similar for most design tools. Whether you're using Figma or XD or Lunacy, or Sketch. Um, you end up, I mean, it basically have the same set of functionality. So once I put it back at the beginning, which is the initial edge I created or the initial node I created, it automatically ends the loop, right? So now it has ended it here. And yeah, you can also use the blend tool to create more adjustments, right? So you can now just have to double click, select a particular item, come back here. So using this tool, so you can bring this, right? You can also, of course, just click on the edge and make this tiny adjustments right here. Yeah, so we're going to be using this tool a lot, trust me, and something I would advise you learn to use. And yeah, we will be creating sample objects, and manipulating those objects using this tool. Next, we'll have the text tool. We can use this for creating new texts. Realistic, creating new texts. All right, and we have the resources. So basically, I've explained this earlier from components, plugin, and widgets. So you can bring in a bunch of widgets. So we have like a random widget generator. We have and yeah, there's more to widgets, and I'll definitely explain that to you because it's an interactive widget. Um, for example, is I'm bringing in the sticky notes widget, which click on this. It's going to start a sticky notes. You can set the size of your sticky notes, small or large. Then you can even click on that sticky note. So let's see. I'll click inside that sticky note and write a bunch of stuff in here, right? So yeah, so this is really interactive. You can, I mean, it works like a component, but basically it's not because you can actually interact with this, use it to boost your productivity, right? So and of course, as you can see, we have like a motion ticket right here. We have a checkbox, and this checkbox is definitely going to be active, similar to what you have when you're doing your prototyping, but in this case, it is really interactive, which means you can check this item and check this item, right? That's the point. So let's go out here and select this item to see if it's currently checked. Let's go and check this item. So I mean, this is really a great addition to Figma, and as we proceed, we'll also get to talk about it. Yeah, then we have the hand tool, basically for panning your artboard or your working area, just moving around your artboard. And finally, the comment tool I use for dropping comments. Because of the constraint we set, as you can see, as we scroll, as we move this item, we see that this item is being moved, right? We see that this item is moved. That's because of the constraints that we've set already on this item, right? You see we have a constraint from left to bottom, so even if we adjust from the side here, which I'm going to do, you see that it's not affecting the movement, right? But when we take it this way, it's affecting it, and that's because we set a constraint and we also ensured that we fix the position while scrolling, right? So if we go ahead and try this again at this point, you see that that still works because of the constraint. So the idea of fixing the position is that when you um, prototype this, when you prototype this, that item is definitely going to be fixed. When you prototype this, so when you scroll, now we're not scrolling, we are scaling, right? So we are scaling, and that is why this constraint is behaving this way. But if we are scrolling, the idea is that this stuff is going to remain here. So if you've seen websites where they have a kind of like a fab, um, or I think we can also call it some kind of chat widgets, right? So they just sit down there and you scroll and it's not affected. So basically, you can fix an item. You can fix an item that we're using to fix position while scrolling. Yeah. So I think the next thing we should also look at are the layers, right? So we have I'll just come up with a quick example. Let's put like a rectangle here, and before we explain this, let me first talk about the field because I'm going to use an example to explain this feature. So we can put in like we can put in a particular image, and I'm going to use a plugin for that. I have a Splash plugin installed, so you can definitely click on this, click on plugins, and then you find more plugins. You can search for Unsplash. So once you click on Unsplash, you can install Unsplash. I already have it installed, so I have to click on Run, and this is going to open up the plugin interface for me. So I want to select random images. Yeah, so basically you use Unsplash to select images. It's a plugin that pulls down the images from the website. So let's assume I select abstract. It's going to load up a bunch of abstract images. So I'm going to select let's select this one. This image is going to be loaded into the rectangle, right? Of course, you can also load images from your local machine, by clicking on this and selecting images from here. Let's take this off for now. And yeah, when you load up your images, you have a bunch of properties, like the exposure. I love to use the contrast and saturation a lot to make images black and white, right? So let's bring this back to normal. Yeah, so you can also set temperature of the image, the themes of the image. So for those of you that are already into graphics, you might understand some of these things. If you don't, you can experiment with that. But let us know if you want us to, explain every single item from exposure down to shadows. We will then have work on a video explain every single item and the concept behind this item. So you can also rotate this image. As you can see, we're rotating the image, that is within the rectangle. So we can fill or fit. We can also crop. We can also set tile. Tile. The way tile works is, if you have a particular image, you can make it. You can use it more like a pattern. But basically, if it doesn't fill the object, it then will create the image and try as much as possible to fill the object. So this is what you know you have with the tile option there. So yeah, let's go with fill. Let's fill that rectangle. Okay, so make it look more like a rectangle, so it doesn't look like I'm sounding. Yeah, I mean, if you understand, how to use some of these effects, you can use this for lighting, color dodge, overlay, soft light, hard light. Yeah, and I'm very sure that I'm not giving the perfect explanation to this. I'm very sure of that. So instead, what we'll do is probably have a session where we can talk about some of these things, and probably explain them better. Let's set the border radius of this item to 50, and let's use lighting. So let's say we have something like this. I'm going to take off some of these items. So basically, you see what we're doing is pretty basic. I'm just trying to create, just trying to make sure it looks nice while we are still designing this. So we have more like a very simple card, right? Very simple card, yeah. And what I'm going to do is bring in a text. So we have text. I'll say a simple card text, right? So we're not using any advanced property here. We're just creating and duplicating text. I just duplicated this text with Ctrl D or Command D. I'm going to set the size here to be something smaller. I will lower soon. Just copy and paste, paste. There's a plugin for doing this anyways. I'm not using a plugin for now. So we just have this this simple text. So we have this item, the border radius of 50. We have this text, which is 100 pixel and it's bold. We also have this item. All right, so yeah, of course, you've actually seen how to select some of these image or color properties. Let's take this back to normal. Let's also take this back to normal. All right, so you can set the opacity with this item, or opacity. 50 px 0. Select this item again. 10. So 20. So this is for selecting the opacity. You can also turn this off using this. You hide the image. Let's bring it back up. You can also use this to hide the image, and you still have the background here, right? You can add more. You can add an overlay, kind of like a dark overlay on top of it, right? And you can also position these items by dragging one on top of the other. So bring this item on top, and you'll see that. Let's do that again. That this is actually covering this image. So go back to the bottom, and you can also remove it from here, just like this, with the minus sign, right? So yeah, so basically you can also convert this into components, kind of like a reusable style, right? Like with color styles. We're not doing that. We're not doing that, but it's possible to actually create like a color style. We'll definitely talk about styles. We'll talk about components. We'll talk about auto layouts in a later video. So stroke. Let's talk about the stroke. The stroke is basically the outline of this particular object. So let's make this like 10, and let's do blue. So look at the stroke is what you have right outside the item here. Let's see if we can do this even better. So I'm going to use white for the stroke, and from this part I can set the opacity. So I'm going to select probably 30. So you see what we have. Let me make this even bigger. Probably that is too much. 25. Fine. All right. So now we have that stroke. Okay. So you can set the stroke to the inside, or in the center. You see the changes. From outside completely, from the inside, right? So you see the changes, right? So outside, center, inside. All right. So you can also use this option to set the width of the stroke, right? So this will give you the width of the stroke, and using this item, you can actually select to say you only want the stroke to appear on top, or just at the bottom, or just by the right, or you want it to appear basically everywhere, like the four corners of the object. So yeah, and selecting this option, you have more stroke options, like making it dashed instead of solid, right? So you have something like this, or setting a custom property or a custom option to the stroke style. So when you select custom, of course, you can add more kind of customizations. Let's leave it as solid. Yeah, and when it comes to the joints, you can make it even smooth, right? So you see it's round, um, and of course, let's assume we have 0 for this. So um, basically, what we can do with this, I don't think I'll be able to show you a good example with this item I have selected, but let's see if I can. So I'm going to select the dashed option again, and probably I should create, let's see, 100. Okay, so using this item, you see what the dashes look like. All right, so let's proceed to talk about effects. Yeah, so working with the effects, there are a bunch of things you can add in there. You can add this is the drop shadow option. You can add inner shadow, layer blur, and background blur. For the layer blur, you see what's happening to the layer there. We can also increase the number of can increase the number we have here, probably like 100. See what we have with our layer. We can change this to background blur, and adjust what we have, maybe to like 500. So yeah, so you actually feel the effect of the background blur when you actually have like you have it sitting on something. So let me go ahead and show you what I mean by that. So let's assume put in this um, zero, sorry, FFF, yeah, let's say 10, right? So okay, so what you can do now is, this has a background, and we want to set a background below. Let's go ahead and add an effect. Go ahead and select background below. And we select 400. Okay, that is way too much. So let's do 50. So you see what we have, right? And then yeah, that's some. Most times we will definitely want to use, nice. Want to have nice effects like this. Let's go ahead and take this off, and let me show you. Uh, quick example of how you might use this for a nice implementation. So we have a simple rectangle. We're able to come up with this. Let's go ahead and stretch this, and stretch this down to this size. All right, let's bring this out a little bit. So now we have more like a glass feel. Cut this and paste it on top here. So we have sample card text. I mean, this is pretty basic. Cut this and also paste it at the top here. Yeah, so there are so many ways you can also make this even more visible. I mean, right now it doesn't give the best effects that you might want to have on your design. Yeah, but let's see if we come down here, probably reduce this down to 20, and click on this and add some sort of overlay. So I mean, it's not that bad, but it's not the best you can have as well. So you can do more. You can do better stuff with this, and yeah, you can have really great designs. Yeah. Okay, so that is for background blur and layer blur. We also have the drop shadow, and in order to show you an example of the drop shadow, let's start by creating another rectangle here. So I'm just going to click on use the arrow, key, the arrow key. Now we have this item. I'm going to create another rectangle, and this would be white. Have the border reduced to 50, and now we're going to apply a drop shadow. So click on effects and then drop shadow. You see we have that shadow, that's sharp shadow right there. I'm going to click on these settings, and I'm going to make the blur like 50, and I'm also going to increase the spread to like 20. So now you see we have a spread there. Change this to 10. I want to make it really soft. I think that's not bad. Maybe I should spread this a little bit again. Let's try 60. All right. So one thing I'm going to do right now is sometimes I just like to increase the spread, and drop. I don't like it when it's very sharp, so you can always adjust with this. Adjust with this. So let us leave it here for now. So you see it's kind of elevated, right? And that is because we have we're working with the drop shadow. If I turn that off, you see that elevation it's no longer there, right? So now it's looking elevated. So you can have your text, have your images. If I select let's do this, select O to give us the ellipse shape. So we have the oval shape just like this. This a little bit smaller. Okay, And yeah, I can decide to bring in this text, probably adjust the size as well. So let's duplicate this. Let's reduce the size to 5. Also change the color. Okay. Hi. So yeah, using these options, this is a property we get for text. So, you can change the text style here, right? So let's select Poppins for example, and this is currently bold. We could change the size, use 20 or 25 or 30. Um, this is for selecting the line height. This is for selecting the letter spacing. This is for the paragraph spacing. And yeah, you have the auto height, auto width, fixed size for the box of your text. This is for center alignment. So let's assume I have a bunch of text. I have a bunch of text. Okay, designer. Okay, so I can change this right for the alignment. This is an alignment that is relative to the parent container, which in this case is going to be the entire design object. So let's press Ctrl Z to take that back. And this is the alignment relative to the item within the text component. So yeah, and you can change the fill. You can set the opacity of the fill, right? It's 50. Just set an opacity of this particular item. Yeah, we can also set a stroke. So you can see set a stroke to this item. That's not something we want to do, so you can do that. You can also apply effects, and yeah, the last item we have here is the spot. Basically, every component will have that spot property. Um, yeah, so these are basically the things you use. You mix and match them to give you a nice design, and this is really basic, right? What we're doing now is fairly basic. Um, yeah, but this is basically how you start and you play around with components to give you expected results. So I hope you understood this the UI. You have a bunch of other items here, basically for creating a component. So you can create a component and then we use this component in other places. You see, we have this as a component right now, so we can reuse that component. If I decide to go down to assets, we have this component. I can create new versions of this item in multiple places. But we'll explain this in a different video. Um, yeah, so that is for working with components. We also have what you call component groups. We have component variants and all that. We'll talk about components. We'll talk about masks. We'll talk about auto layout. Which are some of the things that you have to know next after understanding the controls and how to draw your shapes and all that. So um, yeah, we're going to design a bunch of stuff like buttons. So using a text, you can simply work on a button. Right, so we have a button here. You can create a rectangle shape. There are easier ways to do this with auto layouts, um, and faster ways, but we're not doing that yet. So this is basically how you do it with. This is kind of like the standard way, right? So of course, you should have like a standard size, depending on the UI you are currently working on. But let's assume you're just working on a very random button design. You can make this probably 10. Maybe that's too small. Let's just try 50. So you have a very simple button. Let's use the color green. Okay, I think one thing I also forgot to show you the fact that you can have different types of fields. So, for example, what we are working with right now is solid. You can have a radial fill. You can have a linear fill, which is what you have stuff like this where you work with multiple colors, and this can be applied to your objects like rectangles as well. So we have like that reddish color. We have like a blue color in here. Let's make this better. Let's do this. Okay. So now what we can do is adjust the position of this item. So I mean you can definitely play around with this and try to make it even better. I can click on the center here to create a new to select a new color in between, right? And I can select a color that would match the flow of my design. So you can play around with it and come up with something um, even more creative than what we have here. Yeah, but that's basically the idea. I think what we can do is to use like a deeper color from here. Yeah, and yeah, and you can also add, yeah, you can also use multiple options. Also, you have angular, you have diamond. After doing this, you can also go ahead and add an effect, maybe like an inner shadow. So, an inner shadow, I can spread this out. So, I can make this a glow of 50, and then spread this to 30. So, you see, we have kind of like, let's see, maybe that's too much. So, let's try 25. This is 50, okay, but I think this 35. Let's see what we have. Nah. Okay, so well, basically, you see, we're trying to create, we're beginning to get more like a 3D kind of button. I don't know if this spreads enough. Good. Is that too much? I guess so. All right, so yeah, maybe we should also just adjust the linear. Let's do it from the top right here. Okay. So you see, you can actually have a kind of like a 3D looking button. So these are the kind of things you can do with your fields. And it's very interesting when you begin to learn and master, how to um, compose most of these items. Make it even better. So of course, this button is quite big. Let's try to scale it down. So let's select this item and let's scale. Right. So yeah, of course, I mean this is not so bad, but um, just an example, we have a bunch of spaces here, and yeah, this is not even it's not the best we could do. So this is just an example of what a card would look like. But we're going to work on really amazing cards, really beautiful cards, and we're going to be doing most of them as well, for your tasks. So I hope you understood what we did in this session. It's quite a rush, but yeah, I'll see you in the next class. Bye.